Yeah.
Great. Good afternoon, everybody. I am Carrie Osborne, President of BOMA Orange County. Thank you all for joining today. We are just going to give things another minute or so to allow additional attendees to log on. So stand by for just a moment. I think we'll just give things one more minute here. Okay, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. Thank you all for joining BOMA Orange County for the first virtual town hall of 2021, our commercial real estate market outlook. Again, I'm Carrie Osborne with Irvine Company and your 2021 President of BOMA Orange County. We are really excited about today's speakers and market outlook, and I hope that all of you leave with some really great takeaways today. First of all, I would like to direct your attention to the screen and thank and acknowledge today's sponsors. Thank you to BOMA Orange County's Platinum Partner sponsors, Able Services, ABM, Allied Universal, EMCOR Services, Mesa Energy Systems, and LBA Realty, LBA Logistics, and today's event sponsors, Nugent Painting, GuardTop, and United Paving. We would also like to thank all of BOMA OC's annual partners listed on your screen. Without our partners and sponsor support, today's program and BOMA OC's educational events would not be possible. Next, a big thank you to those listed on the next slide, the committees who worked hard to put today's event together, our industry luncheons, and government affairs committees. Next up, we have a few BOMA announcements. First, BOMA OC has a new management team, the Communications Lab. Our prior management lead, Bill Stewart of GSC, has retired. We certainly wish Gail well in all her next endeavors, and we welcome the Communications Lab. We're happy to have them on board. Please feel free to reach out to the new team if you need anything. And if you are interested in joining, excuse me, or learning more about BOMA OC and how to get involved, including our Luncheons Town Hall Committee, please reach out to BOMA OC. We are always actively looking for new energetic members to join the team in 2021. We're excited to share our upcoming programs, so please keep an eye out for these events in your email or by visiting bomaoc.org. On February 8th, we have an on-the-menu lunch and learn about how the current pandemic is affecting commercial leases. Tentatively scheduled for February 25th, our annual Winner Building Tour hosted by our BOMA Young Leaders Committee. Our Philanthropy Committee is hosting our annual Spring Cleaning Clothing Drive on March 22nd through April 2nd. And our Industry Committee and all of us here at BOMA are extremely excited about our second quarterly virtual town hall. We will have Spencer Levy, who is the chairman of America's Research and senior economic advisor for CBRE, joining us. Featured on Bloomberg, CNBC, CNN, PBS, Fox Business, and more, Spencer is one of the most sought-after speakers in commercial real estate. So please be sure to mark your calendars and join us in April for his economic forecast. Now, without further ado, I would like to introduce your moderator. Cheryl Todd currently serves as principal of Coreland Companies, a Southern California retail third-party management company. Ms. Todd oversees all aspects of Coreland's real estate management and accounting divisions, Coreland's institutional client relations, as well as supervision of its management teams in all real estate management activities. She possesses more than 25 years of real estate experience and has managed more than $1.5 billion in office, industrial, and retail properties throughout her career. Please welcome Cheryl.
Thank you, Carrie. And with that, I'd like to introduce our panelists. Getting a little feedback there. First up, Perry Schonfeld, Principal and COO of LBA Realty and LBA Logistics. Perry is the Principal and Chief Operating Officer for over 40 years of experience in the financial and commercial real estate industries. Since joining LBA in 1997, he's evolved into overseeing the overall operations of the company and currently serves on LBA's investment committee. Perry's been a member of BOMA since 1997. He's a past president, as well as serving on the BOMA International Executive Committee, chair of the BOMA International Nominating Committee. He's currently a BOMA Fellow and a member of the National Advisory Council. Welcome, Perry.
Thank you.
John Combs is the founder and principal of RiverRock Real Estate Group, a West Coast-based commercial real estate firm headquartered in Newport Beach. RiverRock services over 28 million square feet of office, industrial, and retail properties throughout California and Arizona. John formed RiverRock in response to a market-driven need for a more client-centric property service model. John serves as a member of BOMA Orange County and was the recipient of BOMA Orange County's Professional of the Year Award in 2003. The Real Estate Forum named John Best Boss in Commercial Real Estate and featured him as the cover story in June of 2018. Congratulations, John, and welcome.
Come on, John.
Thank you for starting with the oldest guy first.
I didn't hear 45 years of experience for John.
And last but not least, Senator John Moorlach. Senator Moorlach served from 2015 to 2020 as a member of the California State Senate representing the 37th District, which includes portions of Orange County. John is currently a candidate for the Orange County Board of Supervisors. Welcome, Senator.
Thank you very much.
We'll be having question and answers at the end, so please make sure to use the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. I'm glad to say that 2020 is behind us and we're looking forward to 2021. Welcome, gentlemen. I'll be directing questions to some of you, but please feel free to join in. Let's start with the real estate recovery. John, RiverRock manages a diverse portfolio of properties. Are you seeing any signs of recovery in any of your sectors?
Well, that's a great question. First, I'd like to thank Carrie, Jan, Tracy, and Ruben for including Perry on this call. It was a bit of a challenge, but I think he'll be fine.
Hey, Don, it took you 3 minutes to get on my back. That's all.
There you go. You know, BOMA just completed a survey, and because we're all so busy, I'm not sure all of you read it, but 77% of the respondents approved of their landlord and property manager and their actions they took during the pandemic, which I think is just a remarkable number. And I firmly believe that office is a place where companies' values and cultures are best impressed and approved upon. And so I believe that the office market will come back. I remember when the World Trade Center was taken down on 9/11. And there were tenants who said, well, I'll never go on a top floor of a high rise again. And that's prime space around the world. So I think that we will all come back to work. I know I can't wait to be back. And I think that the office market will improve, but it's not as bad as retail, but it's really struggling. And, you know, to take an example of that, we were looking for a space to lease because our lease was coming up. And it was interesting how what landlords would do when we had tours of space during COVID. Some of the landlords, the principals would come out and shake our hand and say they'd love to have us as a tenant. Some of the landlords didn't want to even get out of their office and say hello when we were visiting. And others were really aggressive. And the way they showed space was really aggressive in certain areas. Like I remember the Irvine Company, they had the whole management team of the building meet us to walk back in. And so I thought that that was really impressive. And we ended up buying a building out of bankruptcy that was tied up in bankruptcy for $1 million more than we paid. And so I really think it's a one-story building, and that's where a lot of the office is going to go, is going to be where you can pull in and walk in and not ride an elevator. The industrial space is on fire. We have quite a bit of it. And the tenant interest and leasing activities are like crazy. And in retail, we just, we just reopened the Liberty Stations food hall, and it's full already. And so retail's spotty, but even the cinemas are talking about coming back in. And we just did a workout on one of the big cinemas where they plan to reopen. So, I mean, I think we all want to get there. I just think retail is definitely changing. And an example of that is I heard at CB that they're reorganizing and they're putting the industrial as part of the the mall space. The mall people are going into the industrial group because they're planning on taking those dark stores at the malls and making them Amazon fulfillment or, UPS or whatever it might be. So, I mean, a global company is reorganizing two specialties, putting them together. That is where retail is today. It's like so exciting and different. So I think that to answer your question, office will come back. It's still pretty quiet. I think our buildings are about 20 to 30% occupied. And I think that retail is not going to be the same retail anymore, but it's on its way. And I think that industrial is going to be a big winner out of all this.
Great. I agree with everything you say, John. Thank you. Perry, LBA has been a force in commercial property acquisitions. Despite these distressful times, are there still opportunities to buy in today's environment?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, it's great to be here. And John, believe it or not, I agree with 90% of things you said. That's a good ratio given our past history. But yeah, listen, I'll say this. I'll get you a question, but one of John's comments. I was sitting on the podium of BOMA Orange County as president in 2001, right after 9/11. Maybe there's people out there in the virtual world who were at that event. And I looked out in the audience and everyone was in this malaise, as they rightfully should have been. But the strength, I think at times like this, as Warren Buffett said, when the tide goes out, you could see who's wearing swimming trunks, if you could kind of get a visual on that. I think we're going to see that this will, the best operators, to John's point, the people that show up and pay attention to what I call grassroots kind of notions will win. But to your point about investments, as you know, we have an industrial and an office fund. We've recently, 4 or 5 years ago, bifurcated them into two separate product types for good reason, as you can see today. But I see tremendous opportunity on the office side. I'm optimistic. I think no one knows how this thing's going to shake out. On the negative side, people are going to come back. Maybe 20, 25% of the workforce will be allowed that remote capability and the office needs won't happen. And on the other side, they need to be spatially distanced when they do come back. I don't know where that falls out, but I'll tell you this, the tide has gone out. There'll be opportunities. And I think when we get into other points and deeper into the office side and due diligence, there's tremendous opportunities if you have liquidity to give life to the built environment in a new way. And I'm sure we're going to touch upon many of those ways. but the built environment will take on a repurposing. And there are some great office assets out there. And John picked up, I think you said one in bankruptcy. You know, there's going to be a lot of that. I'm not suggesting there's going to be bankruptcy people lining up, but I am suggesting there's going to be a turn of the hand on product and an ability to have good infill office that fits the needs of certain types of tenants, which I think we'll get into later on.
Great. Thank you, Perry. We're going to cover a lot of different topics, so I'm going to move over to legislation and policies. A few years ago, my daughter gave me my favorite glass with a quote from Game of Thrones. Leave one wolf alive and the sheep are never safe. While we're not certainly sheepish, if our industry is considered the sheep, would Proposition 15 be our wolf? Senator, could you share your thoughts?
Well, thank you, Cheryl, and thank you for letting me, be a participant in the John and Perry show.
Hey, there's a membership fee there, John.
But it's not a tax. The Prop 15 was a full frontal attack on your industry. Lots of history. Split roll's been discussed for quite a long time. Being former treasurer of the County of Orange, working with the assessor, you can certainly see that the principal residence side of the real estate market turns over quite a bit, but not the commercial side, not real estate. Disneyland will never turn over. So you see low values and not the kind of growth that's occurring in the residential side, especially with low interest rates and housing prices going up. That's good news for the County of Orange, since 92% of its revenue comes from real estate taxes. But in Sacramento, something interesting happened. They built the Sheraton Hotel, and it's just right behind the Hyatt. And they looked and they said, oh, look, the Hyatt has a very low tax base, but the Sheraton is now at a higher base because of its cost of building and land. And that just didn't seem fair. But hey, wait a second, if we charge the Hyatt the same amount, that would make it a little more equitable. Oh, but wait, that also generates revenue, and we need revenue. At the time, they needed revenue, and the unions just saw it as a great way to make some extra tax revenues by pursuing split roll. Why? The union leaders can see the writing on the wall when it comes to their pension plans and when it comes to their unfunded retiree medical plans. They are woefully underfunded. CalPERS is probably 70% right now. And so they know that there's a day of reckoning where this money has to come. Unfortunately, the split roll came about when taxes were actually doing quite well, thanks to Prop 30 and its successor. So Sacramento really didn't need more tax revenues, and it certainly has been going after the one percenters, which I'll maybe talk about a little later in the program. But they really need the money to start paying down these pension fund liabilities. So what's been very unique in this whole year of 2020 is that we had a massive decline in stock market values right after we did the shutdown in early March, and the market literally just dropped like a rock. But the rest of the year, it went up and caught up, and the Dow Jones is now over 30,000. Something, who would have thought that would even have been possible? So right now, CalPERS should be fine when it does its June reporting for its performance because of the unique year that we've had. The issue is that going to keep going? Are we going to go to 35? Are we going to go to 40? Are we, is that realistic? Is that, or are we going to go back to 25 or to 20? So I guess the two things we need to worry about is, one, if the stock market goes down, if it corrects and it impacts the contribution rates for pension plans, then you need to be concerned about Prop 15 coming back. If interest rates rise precipitously and we see some things happen in the marketplace, it might also be a cause for reduced income taxes, personal income taxes, and then a request for more revenue. So you might see Prop 15 coming back. The problem has been for your industry is that you're spending so much money every 2 years. 2018, it was Prop 10, 60 million plus that you raised to fight that. And now this, last year you fought Prop 15, and it may come back, and you're always on the defense. And so that's very expensive, and the unions aren't spending as much, because they just got to get the ball rolling and things happen. So I guess maybe to close this segment, Cheryl, maybe the business community has to think about what can it do in the way of ballot measures to kind of make the union spend some money. Maybe it's changing the minimum wage, or maybe it's requiring new employees to go into a defined contribution plan. That ought to really get them going. Or maybe it's school choice, and that ought to get the school unions going. But maybe just for fun, you ought to be thinking about not always being on the defense, but maybe there's an opportunity to kind of improve California through a ballot measure that frustrates some of the real power in Sacramento.
Hey, John, Cheryl, I had a question just with John, just real quick. What do you think tipped this? I know it was a narrow margin on Prop 15. I don't recall. Maybe you could comment on that. But what do you think tipped the scale in that regard?
And John, I mean Perry. Which one's Perry? I'm sorry. That's a joke.
Actually, we're interchangeable.
Perry's the old guy.
Yeah, I guess if you can tease each other.
Hey, John.
I don't know what the tipping point is. It was really interesting to get the polling data. I worked really closely with John Kupal with the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association. And you would think this would be a no-brainer. This is a tax increase, but it doesn't seem to impact regular people, homeowners, renters, who cares if commercial property tax goes up? And of course, it was for worthy causes, right? And that's how some of these taxes always kind of get sold, this is for better public safety. This is for the homeless. This is for, you fill in the blank. And so it's never a pension tax. It's always a pothole tax or some other moniker. But I don't know what happened, but I know that the polling was real positive at the beginning, and then it started to really narrow up. And so it got everybody really nervous.
It did indeed.
And you're right, a lot of money was spent by a lot of organizations to fight it. So I like your comment on going on the offensive. We'll have to have another town hall and let you speak to that and how we can figure that one out going forward. Let's talk about some trends in commercial real estate. Business owners everywhere at the beginning of 2020 had to pivot and redefine their operations. Mr. Combs, what changes have you seen in our industry, and do you think these changes will continue in 2021?
I just want to go back for a second to John's comments because I thought they were really great. I got a call from Scott Weiner, whatever his name is, from Sacramento wanting me to donate to his campaign. And I said, Scott, I'm sorry, but aren't you the one that is helping with the split tax roll campaign? He goes, absolutely. I said, well, I absolutely won't help you. And he was horrified. And we had an hour conversation. I mean, I really like Scott. I've known him a long time. I was president of BOMA San Francisco. He came and spoke at our luncheons. He's a really smart guy. And so I found it interesting, as I do today in any politics, that there's two parties, sometimes three, with very strong opinions, and they don't talk to each other because they have strong opinions. And I found my conversation with Scott fascinating about San Francisco because if any place has problems with homelessness, it's San Francisco. It's really in trouble. So anyway, I really appreciate, John, your comments, because I think it's really interesting where we are with Orange County. I know we're going to talk about the airport later, but I just heard Jet Suite X is getting to stay at the airport. So I don't know what you did, but thank you for that. When it comes to businesses pivoting in 2020, we learned to listen more than ever. And we also learned that we were wrong more than we were right in a lot of our opinions about life. By way of example, we had, property management is focused on occupancy, right? So in 1 week, our buildings emptied. And we emptied our offices and went from a desk job with property visits to a work from home office with property visits and dealing with people who weren't comfortable going out on the properties. I mean, JM was with us back then before she abandoned me. And, she would go to the properties and she was raising her kids and having a baby and the whole bit. But it was a whole new day for all of us to learn how to work from home. And it's going to be just as hard to leave that and come back to the office as it was to go there, because it's a complete adjustment in our daily routines, right? And so I know I started a virtual workout class with a trainer, and people loved it. I thought it would last a week based on pricing, but based on demand, it lasted all last year. And I think it helped me get through this whole thing because it was a routine that became new for me, but regular. And so I think that what we learned is we can work virtual. There can be modifications to working virtual and coming to the office. And we have to work with people. We have to do workarounds with their families and their needs and their fears of coming to work. I think that I hate Zoom, but I do use it all the time, like today. We got a PPP loan, which was a godsend in our business, being low margin. I didn't lay anyone off. I was proud of that. And we grew 30% fourth quarter. In third-party management, that's a miracle. And so if you can grow in a pandemic era, then I think you're going to be okay in the end. And I feel kind of guilty about that. But I think that I've always said property management is countercyclical. And we do best in a downturn because we become important. And I really believe that now is the time to take risk, expand and grow. And you can find amazing opportunities that you would never see in a normal or healthy marketplace. So I'm encouraging all of you, every downturn, I look back, I spoke on the NAOP call yesterday. I look back, every downturn I took on risk and I grew personally and professionally. And I think that is something to remember during all this. And change is uncomfortable, but it can create some amazing opportunities.
Yes, I agree. I don't think I've ever been busier than 2020.
I think everyone would say that on this call.
Yeah. Juggling. Perry, given the changes we've experienced during the pandemic, do you foresee any permanent shift in building functionality or design?
I do. But if I may, could I go back to one more macro CRE that I think will impact some of the people on the phone that service building owners like John, and the opportunities that may be abound. For those who are on the call that are working for owners or third-party managers, investing today in underwriting deals, it's a different game. I think particularly when it comes to office, we'll talk about office because it's struggling. The underwriting, the preciseness, the integration of resiliency, knowing the tenant, knowing the backdrop of the tenant's business, because I think you're going to find in any disruption, they're going to be winners and losers. As an example, we know that certain firms are still going to want to differentiate in this environment, and they're going to use office as a creative weapon. And therefore, managers need to welcome them back. They need to provide them, just like a hospitality business, give them a reason to come back to the office. Then there's other businesses like financial services and more commodity-based business. I don't care what you do. You're going to have a cost equation backdrop of a reduction in overhead. And you might want to now, so you got to spend your time appropriately, and you got to assess the underwriting of your tenants appropriately. And that, to me, investing in buildings, that's a key underwriting criteria that I never really got into the backdrop of what the tenant really is doing inside the four walls and how I can impact that equation. And so I just throw that out there because we kind of stopped at the tenant door. Yeah, we had lunch, we went in there. I got to know how they make money, how they create competitive distinction. I got to know if they're going to grow in my space, and I got to underwrite that appropriately. Just a side note on I think, that now all these things, macro, to your point about CRA and buildings, everything that I think has gone on in the last, is it a year left? Is it a year? Yeah, it's a year. Everything that's gone on is just accelerated. I think things that have already happened, it's just brought forward. Just like, we brought forward e-commerce to be 25% of our business from 12 or 8, whatever it was. So I think it's brought forward digital transformation. It's brought forward collaboration. The old thing of workspaces that were co-working, we'll call them flex now, and they have to have the ability to be flexible. Maybe because we don't want people co-working and sitting out in open areas. Maybe they want more private offices in a flex environment. So I think you're going to see things renamed, but it also accelerated trends that everyone on this call knew about. In terms of the building design, I think if you're starting from scratch, you're going to want to have, let's talk of the obvious, campus-oriented spaces, more outdoor space. You're actually going to have outdoor space that you could work at. You're going to have outdoor structures. I know in one of our properties, we're contemplating glass structures outdoors that you could go there and sit down. You could have Wi-Fi and you could shut your sliding glass and you could work outdoors. Now, did the tenants pay for that? I guess implicitly they might, but to me, the collaboration will expand beyond the footprint of the building, which I think, quite frankly, was happening before.
Okay, great.
In that regard. And then I think you're going to see all a focus on wellness and whether it's optics or whether it's substantive, we're going to have this industry a re-entry mechanism to give people comfort. And we already have designations of well, fit well, but there are numerous other things that go on, but all those, the working habits will dictate that. But start with the customer behavior in the industry they're in.
Okay, great. Thank you. Senator Moorlach, there have been a lot of building codes imposed on businesses for sustainability and green operations. Are there additional upcoming initiatives we can expect in construction or operations?
Thank you, Cheryl. I was anticipating a different question, but
A curveball.
no, it's just been interesting, Cheryl. Having served in various positions, I was a partner in a CPA firm before I ventured into the public sector, and so you sort of make a lot of observations, and good government is critical for a good business environment and climate. And so one of the observations from Sacramento after watching everybody be concerned about climate change and how do we address it and what kind of mandates do we put in, and then you start to wonder, well, how's it all working from the 30,000 foot level? And it's not. And it's just real interesting. We want to move everybody to renewables, but they don't include nuclear or hydro. So you have to build a lot of solar and you have to build wind. And that's really impacted a lot of municipalities in the central part of the state because they had access to dams in the Sierras, and then but they couldn't use that in their computations. And then there's been this strong push to purchase electric cars. But wind and solar works during the daytime and people are charging their cars at the nighttime. So it sort of hasn't been fully thought out. And when you force the utilities to make a lot of changes, then what happens, they defer maintenance on their grids. And so we see now windy days like yesterday, but they disrupt power lines and all of a sudden we have wildfires. And a big percentage of California's wildfires have been caused by poorly maintained electric power lines. And we've in Napa, Sonoma, in the last few years, we've seen over 120 people perish because of faulty lines. So there hasn't been a focus on the overall strategy for California. And what's frustrating as an observer is that when you have a wildfire that goes for 2.5 days, it creates as much greenhouse gas and particulate matter as all the cars driving in California for a year. So you have lost all the benefits of everything you're doing with regards to code changes and LEED and all the rest just within a few days. And last year we had so many wildfires, but we also had something very interesting. We had a heat wave, and that heat wave caused brownouts. And so one of the things that I think commercial property owners need to be concerned about is this PSPS, this public safety power shut off. When Trader Joe's has to start giving away all of its food because the freezer has been down for 2, 3, 4 days, that's not gonna work. And so we've got to try and figure out how to take a stronger, more focused look at the 30,000 foot level to make sure the infrastructure is in place so that you are generating power at the right time and that you can transmit it and you can do it safely without having to worry about all the factors of wind and overgrowth and the rest. Fortunately, in this state, San Diego Gas and Electric has done a super job. They have cameras up. They have meteorologists on staff. They're always watching to see what happens in what we would call wildfire zones. Edison also coming along real well, but Pacific PG&E has been the villain in Sacramento. They've been the bad guys, and they've been the punching bag of sorts. But we still need to take a better look at what we're doing with the whole, so that when you start adding incrementally bills to require certain mandates by certain years, you had better figure out that it all fits in a proper and an appropriate manner. Otherwise, what are we doing if we're losing all the benefits within 2.5 days or a few days of a large fire? And again, last year we had horrific fires.
Right. Thank you, Senator. I'm going to try and keep this moving along. We want to be able to take some questions and answers. So I'm going to consolidate one of our topics to both Perry and John Combs, and that's changes in the workplace and optimizing operations. What have you done or how have business operations changed at your respective companies? And what changes have you seen in customer service in a virtual setting? And gentlemen, I'll just leave it to you, and then we'll move on to our next topic.
Hey,
Perry.
John, you take that.
Perry.
Hey, John, what do you think about that? John, what do you think of that?
I have a lot of thoughts about that, actually. First of all, we have to be more engaged with these tenants, these occupiers in our buildings, and realize that they're going through the same emotional and work stress that we are. And, it went from, we had their cell phone numbers, now we're texting them and talking to them regularly wherever, because they're not in the office. And so that's been a big change. And I think in the beginning it was, we're on it, we're seeing your buildings. You're not going to drive by and see graffiti. We're going to be there and see it before you to the property owners. We're visiting, et cetera. Now we're into getting certified with viral response with Fitwell. We're very close to that. We're into, as Perry said, the wellness programming and reoccupancy and flex. And so as occupancy begins to re-enter, we have to give our occupiers a reason to feel safe to come to the building. And so we've used our new building that we bought to get really educated on what can we do as we redevelop this site to make people feel safe, that they're coming to a healthy environment. And by the way, that includes things we haven't figured out yet. Like, are we going to require people to show they've been vaccinated before they return to the office? Are we going to say, there's always exceptions to vaccines and have everyone come in when they're ready? Are we going to do, we're doing fever checks now, but are we going to also do blood oxygen testing when people come in? I don't know what all we're going to end up having to do and what incentives we have to give people to feel like it's worth it coming back to the office. But I feel like people will be back. And so what are we changing in the office space? We're doing day cleaning. For our new building, we're working with Goodwill to have some of their people with barriers to entry to do day cleaning in the building. I think that would be awesome to help Goodwill of Orange County and also let people see, well, we are cleaning and we are sanitizing their workspaces. So these are the kinds of things that I think we have to think about to make people feel comfortable. And I'm a germaphobe and I'm freaked out being in the office today for this call, but it's okay. And it's part of the psyche of returning back to the office with work. And every time someone comes in my office, I'm like throwing my mask on and saying, wait a minute, and I'm putting on, and it's hard to hear people, but it's okay. It's all good. Now you asked two questions. I forget what the other one was.
Well, customer service in a virtual setting. You talked about.
I'll let Perry handle that one.
Oh, he's such a nice guy. By the way, John,
no, Perry, tell us about those tenant. You're doing those tenant wine.
Yeah, I will do that.
Great.
No, please tell them. That's so interesting to me.
But you do look a little tense today, by the way.
I am tense. You're on the call.
You have to relax a little bit.
Okay.
Everything's going to be okay. It's over in about 15 minutes. But I'll say this, when you talk about, I'll approach this a little differently from a company standpoint. When it first happened, everyone's got a business continuity plan, you know, for the 100-year plague or whatever it is. Well, believe it or not, that came off the shelf. And then the first question you got to say is, who are my stakeholders? Who has a stake in what I do every day? And in our case, it was everyone from tenants to brokers to investors to bankers, you know, to employees. And so we took every one of them, and they had a unique approach, but you had to touch every one of them. And ironically, with some of these interactions, to John's point, they're actually more intimate than they ever have been. I mean, I'm on a call with a tenant last week, and the German Shepherd pops on, you know, and what's the name? We talk about it. I don't have that opportunity ever before. I mean, I didn't like the look of the dog, but it didn't impact my relationship with them. But the point is, we had a nice conversation. So I think in many respects, you have an opportunity, to John's point, to really make a difference because the tide has gone out, and things you do now will impact that goodwill. In terms of what we've been doing on, you know, employees, we just have to communicate more. And I'm not talking about 150-person Zoom calls from the CEO, John Combs. I'm just talking about one-on-one Zoom, bring the dog in, bring the kid jumping on the table, and just have a connection more than ever. It's not drive-by conversation. So I think people are dying for that bad word. People want that, and they're asking about it. In terms of the community out there, you know, with the broker, to John's point, we have done virtual broker events. We had one event in Northern California where everyone got in their car. We had an in-and-out truck, and they sat in their car like a drive-in theater, and we did a bunch of stuff, and then they drove, picked up their burger, put the door down, no vaccine shot, and got out. And, you know, making that little effort made a difference. The other one John's talking about to some of corporate customers is we had a virtual wine tasting where we sent wine to their homes, 3 bottles. They showed up on the Zoom. We had, I don't know the technical name, John, help me out, John and the wine connoisseur, but the wine expert.
Sommelier.
There you go. I would have said that wrong. Took us through the tasting. They all had their wives on the screen. And it was incredible. And then we wove in a couple of business development things in the middle after 3 glasses of wine. And we got more out of it. But my point is, you got to just do things creatively and touch each of your stakeholders in a very intimate way, which I think you could do today, absent one-on-one in person.
I was playing tennis, and one of the ladies had just done a virtual wine, and they sent cheese and wine over to her. So great
Yeah, there
idea.
you go. There you go.
Yeah,
Okay,
wonderful. So our last topic we want to touch on is talent, diversity, inclusion, health, and wellness in the workplace. And I'd like to start with Senator Moorlach. As business owners and property managers, what can we do to ensure the safety of our employees and tenants in our office space and buildings?
Well, I think John and Perry have kind of hit it up. You know, it's the wash your hands, socially distance, wear the mask. Nothing more deep than that. For me, take good vitamins. You know, be careful. So I don't know if I have anything real dramatic, Cheryl, to add.
Do you think there'll be any requirement for vaccinations to the returning workforce?
That is a great question, and that will be an area that will be very controversial. Even our healthcare professionals, our fire professionals, firefighter professionals, they're not asking for the vaccines, they're avoiding them. So there's some real concern about certain issues in that regard. And I'm not a medical professional, so all I can just say is what I'm observing. So John and Perry might have a little more.
The one thing I'd ask you, John Moorlach, is, you know, there are two concerns we have. We want to make sure people obviously are safe and they feel comfortable coming to the environment, and we have all sorts of fever checks and honor system, but a lot of it's also liability. You know, are we liable to our tenants? I don't know about anyone on this call, but there isn't a day I don't send out 5 letters telling the world that I have COVID cases in my building. It's almost like the old ADA plaques. So and there's talk of a pandemic reform insurance act similar to TRIA, John, anything you're seeing in the legislative world that's going to address the liability side? Because we would be a lot freer to do things if we felt we weren't going to have 7 lawsuits tomorrow morning because we have an unsafe environment.
And I don't have a good solid answer for you. I don't have a bill number or anything that
I was going to ask you. It's Bill 4310, right?
4310. That would be AB.
Exactly.
I mean, that would have been a late bill at the end of last session to have a number that high.
Right.
But it also shows you the volume of work. If we're talking 4,300 bills in a 2-year, and that's just the assembly side. So you can cut that in half and add another 2,000 on the Senate side. So forgive me for not being having a fast answer on that one.
That's okay. I just wanted the world to watch out for that, particularly in Congress, because I do think it's something that.
Okay, well, that's an HR. That's a congressional bill.
Yeah.
And,
well,
and
either way, state or federal.
I've been focused on Sacramento, so I apologize.
No worries. No worries.
No, Perry, I think you bring up a good point. You know, we posted signs on every property we manage. We have them in the buildings we're entering, and it's something that we as an industry should probably be watching as the next round of lawsuits, similar to the ADA that have plagued us for years.
That's
And
right.
then I'll direct this last question to John and Perry. What are your companies doing to promote diversity and inclusion in the workplace?
All right, John, you did the last one. This was a pivot year for a lot of things. I think we all thought we had, at least I personally did. I thought I had a mindset toward it, and I thought I obviously care about it. But they look at our industry. We really don't have a great record in our industry. I'm talking pervasively, so I'm not offending anybody. So obviously you got to do the basics and move the needle. And I think it's engagement from the top first and foremost. And so we've done that. It could be at a board level, it could be an advisory board level, it could be at a C-suite level. But that has to start, and then obviously the committee, the formation. But I think you got to look at all aspects of your business, and I'm talking banking, vendor contracting, recruiting, community development around the assets that you own or manage. You have to be a hand in all those philanthropically, and you also have to maybe your minority women-owned, the old days they called them maybe-weeby programs, minority and women-owned business programs. You have to start to direct business, if you will, on a competitive basis to make a real difference. And you have to engage in the communities. Now, we own a lot of industrial properties, and they would tend to be in maybe neighborhoods that are not as advantaged. And we looked at our regions to get engaged in those communities in a very meaningful way. But at the end of the day, it's action, it's results. And I'm excited about what we're doing, but as an industry, BOMA, all the big organizations have to press forward on this topic, because I don't think it's one of these things that will go away. It shouldn't go away, and it's time for action. But it is very important to us.
Great, thank you. John, did you have any comments?
This is perhaps the most interesting strategic item I'm working on this year is DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I have to be frank that I thought I got it and I don't. The more I read, the more I try to apply it here, and over half of our workforce are women or minorities. It's still not enough. And we just recently had an opening for our right-hand guy to our CFO. And I happen to know a guy who had a CPA license. He's very bright. I've met him several times. And he was Indian. And he came for the interview. He didn't get the job because he's Indian, but I would have never thought about him until I realized I need to be thinking about DEI, and every decision we make, if we can find the best person, we will go for them first. And but if they have some form of DEI, it makes it even greater for us to strategically hire them. So we've started a committee, and I'm sending articles, and the committee chair is sending articles. But I realize I don't think that I'm the least bit prejudiced about anything. but I found out that it's not the top of my mind. And that is embarrassing for me. So this year, my goal is to improve that. And the way we're going to do that is through trying to create alliances with different groups that find young people coming out of high school or college in that category. It includes us working with BOMA. Some of the BOMA chapters have DEI programs now and are bringing people in, which I think is phenomenal. So we're going to try to work with BOMA to bring people into our organization. And as Steve Court told me the other day about this, because it's on all of our minds, we can't probably find people in the DEI category that are experienced in property management. So our role is going to be to bring people into this industry and help them evolve and grow in it. And that sounds fine with me. Anything's better than nothing. And so I really feel like we all have this responsibility, and we're seeing it happen across the board everywhere. And I think it's just amazing and important to do.
Right, thank you. At this point, I'm going to go back to some of the questions asked from our audience. The first one comes from LBA. With multiple companies announcing their move out of California, is the state legislature and local governments concerned and focused on attracting companies such as Oracle, Toyota, CBRE? Those are the ones moving out. States like Texas are attracting businesses, and California is driving them out with taxes and regulations. When does attracting business become a priority? And gentlemen, I'll open it up to one of you
That's right to the heart, John Moorlach.
Well, it gets back to the issue of a good government is a good business climate. And California has been doing its best to discourage people and to ask them to move out. And there comes a point where the weather tax gets to be a little too onerous, especially when you talk to people that own businesses on the other side of the Sierras. So yeah, you've already listed a lot of the companies that have already left, but at the end of session last year, there were two bills that were introduced. And I was vice chair of Governance and Finance, Senate Finance, Governance and Finance Committee. I said, don't talk about these bills. Don't even bring them up. And they did anyway. But they said, we're not going to vote on them. We're just going to discuss them. Well, one was to take the personal income tax rate of 13.3%, probably the highest in the nation, and bring it up to 16.8%. And the other, that was, get my glasses on, that was AB 1253 by Santiago. And then they also introduced AB 2088 by Bonita, excuse me, to have a wealth tax. And it would trail and follow you for 10 years, even if you moved out of state. And so it just messaged to the rest of the country, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a business starter, if you're a jobs creator, don't come to California. And what's happened since? You didn't mention Elon Musk. You didn't, everybody that's sort of now moving to Texas. And I had one Newport Beach resident, he confronted me 2 years ago, and he said, look, I am making more than $1 million a year. And I am paying 13.3%, but I don't get to have the state and local tax deduction. So I am now really paying a marginal tax rate of 23%. So I'm giving you one out of every 4 of my dollars that I earn. What am I getting? Because I don't like what you're doing up in Sacramento. I don't like the climate, I don't like the politics. And I said, I got nothing for you. And he said, don't worry about it. I've just closed escrow on a $10 million mansion in Florida, which is a no personal income tax state, and I'm moving. Well, I called him recently and I said, how's it been going? He said, there's so many people moving to Florida in my tax bracket that my house has appreciated 40% in the last 2 years. So when you got people that are just had enough of what's going on. Why do I always feel like you're already making enough off the 1%ers? 1 out of every 4 billionaires lives in California, but they can be mobile. They can move. They have that ability. And thank the good Lord that these people that represent 1% of our population pays 50% of the personal income tax. I mean, it's just, and if we're going to keep frustrating them, that's going to start having very strong repercussions and reverberations going down the road. And the other side of that's the top down. The bottom up is that our cities are starting to have real troubles. I mean, the city that your product may be residing in, may be in trouble. I mean, Anaheim, you shut down the resort, you shut down the convention center, you shut down the baseball field, the hockey team, and then you have all the hospitality related businesses, all the restaurants, and that's going to have a real impact on their balance sheet. Costa Mesa shut down South Coast Plaza for a few months, retail. It's going to have a real impact. And Costa Mesa already was in the worst shape of all 34 cities when you looked at their balance sheet and you looked at the funding of their pension plans. So we've got like San Diego just got told by their pension board, and they're an independent pension board, but their pension plan contribution is going to go up almost $50 million, and they're making layoffs and cuts. So I think from the bottom up, you're going to have to be real concerned about the strength of your city. If you're in Irvine, strong city, but you need to start looking at what's called the comprehensive annual financial report, a CAFR, and look at the financial strength of your cities and what can we do to help them out, to going forward, because we're going to start seeing their reports for June 30, 2020 coming out real soon, and it's going to be really interesting to see what tale they tell based on what
John, do you have any points of light on this? Out of the last election, I know we have it running out of time here, but just give me a yes, please.
Pardon me, Perry.
Any points of light on this last election?
I'm just trying to say we need to be realistic. There's some things going in, and the last thing you would want, Perry, is to be blindsided.
That's true. I'm just looking for something to hang on to.
Yeah, when the New York Times called San Diego Enron by the sea, ask all the realtors what happened to prices, And so we've just got to keep an eye on the ball. You got to be careful on who you elect, and you got to be careful on what's being spent. You can say, Disney can say to Anaheim, hey, we produce half the revenues for your city, but boy, when you're closed, what happens to that city? What happens to the transient occupancy tax? I mean, what are they losing? $1 million a day with all those hotels, virtually empty.
Thank you so much.
So we got to be careful. We got to watch.
Excuse me. Did you have a comment, Senator? You okay?
No, I just want to say thank you, Perry. I do want to provide, positive news, but we also don't want to just kind of ignore the elephant in the room.
Right. Well, I do want to end on a positive note, and so I'm going to pose this question to our panelists. What changes are you hoping to see in 21 and beyond? And I'd like to also rephrase that as, what do you hope to see? Hope being the key word. What are your views here? Perry, John?
John, I went last time, you go.
John?
Well, clearly we want to have a, vaccine that has, will affect the majority of people that are willing to take it. And what that means is not that people won't get sick, but it hopefully means that people can start getting together again. And so I lay awake worried about risk versus reward. How soon can we get the vaccine out? When will it affect occupancy, which is the key in property management? When will all my employees be able to get it, and our clients? And we have not been immune to this disease. We had 5 employees get COVID in the past 2 weeks, and it creeps closer and closer to us all with all these new strains. So what I'm praying for is a vaccine that gets out widely distributed. And I know anyone could have said that on this call, but it is what to me is the key to everything. And as I said earlier, we're growing in spite of it, but I can't imagine how we'll do if that gets out there quickly. And so one of my goals was to be able to put this backdrop up for this call. That was new for me. So thank you. And I did want to say this, a friend sent me this in a holiday card. It says, hang in there.
Very well said.
Good things will happen. And that's how I feel right now. It will get better, all of you.
Hey, John, I sent that to you, actually.
Oh, it was from you. Thank you.
Perry, any closing thoughts?
Well, I echo everything John said. And John Moorlach, thank you so much. That was enlightening in terms of, the awareness. But I'll say this, one's on a business level, one's on a personal level. On a business level, I just want to know what my tenants want. I want their programming to be clear to me. I don't know if they need more space, less space, different, where they want it. Everyone's in this purgatory phase of not knowing. So I just want clarity of programming for my customers, so we could develop the demand equation or service them. On a personal level, I just want to give John Combs a hug And John at Moorlach, I'm happy to, we just met, but I'm happy to do the same. But I just want to get back to an emotional connection with people that's not like this.
And briefly, Senator, any closing thoughts?
We'd like to see some balance. You know, we've focused so much on closing down the economy last year. And, you know, the phone calls we got were just very difficult from business owners laying off 60 plus employees and making, there's so many changes. And so there's got to be a little balance where we know who's vulnerable and we know that the rest of the population should be able to go to Costco and Vons and all the rest like they're doing. And so I would just like to see some balance in the equation so that we're not providing a cure that's worse than the disease.
Great. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much. This has been a very informative event, and I appreciate your time. And I would also like to thank the BOMA committee for putting this together. And at this point, I'd like to turn it back over to Carrie Osborne. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much. Cheryl, fantastic job. Thank you so much. To all of our attendees, we hope that you found today's town hall to be helpful and educational. I believe on your screen now or coming up is a link to BOMA International's coronavirus resource website, BOMA Orange County's website, and our contact information. So if you have any further questions about today's discussion or need any additional information, please feel free to reach out. Again, thank you all. John, and Perry, you guys are wonderful, informative, and very entertaining. Have a great afternoon, everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Cheers.